I think it's very interesting to see one artist and how they develop. This is 30 years of my work. It's a retrospective, and I think it gives you, or at least it's really interesting for me, to see how I've changed and how the work has remained figurative, but how it has evolved. I start with a narrative where the psychological elements of the individual pieces can get changed, and when you change the pieces, this would be in the 80s, they would make different stories. And then I move on to the totems, which are back there, and that's when I started to try to get the clay a little lighter and move it up off the ground. And so the head's at the top, which is heavier, and the feet are a little lower down, and it becomes fractured in a different way. In the narratives, that's fractured in the different parts, and in the still dances, it's fractured going up. And then I turn to the metal pieces, mutable cells. And in this case, I try to work again with lightness in the clay, and I suspend the clay between, in a negative space, in a thin piece of metal, which looks very light but is very, very strong. It doesn't have very much dimension. And so that's another way of getting the clay suspended and making it light and airy. And I start to play with the negative shape, which is like the ghost of the positive, play with that. Then I go on to work more with components. So I work with a mold and try to work with installations where the similar shape works differently in relationship with each other. So I'll have in Rock's Breath, which you see on the invitation and also when you come into the gallery, that piece, there were 35 of them initially, and they were made for a garden, and they were all made from one piece, and then they formed this unit that became an installation, and I started to work with installations. So then the jumping children in the back there, called State of Grace, were 15 pieces, and they again filled up a room, and they were jumping up and down, and they also seemed very light because they had the metal poles that would make them move up and down, but they were made from components. And then I end up with my last piece, which has just happened in the last couple of years, that actually hang from the ceiling. So they are really light, and they're starting to descend down. But so that was sort of, I think in 2 minutes, that would be how I would summarize the 30 years of my work.
We are thrilled to have the exhibition Embodiment opening at the Art Gallery of Algoma. This is the first venue. This exhibition is going to tour in Ontario and nationally, hopefully. And I would like to thank the Canadian Government, Department of Canadian Heritage, Museum Assistance Program for funding generously this project. Without their funding, this exhibition would not be possible. So funding from the Museum Assistance Program was essential to put the exhibition together, to bring it here, and also the funding is received for producing a publication, bilingual publication, which we are hoping to have ready during the run of this exhibition, and we will have a book launch when the publication is ready. So the exhibition will be up until mid-January 2017, so our hope is to have the book ready by then.
Normally you see the work of an artist that he's doing right at that particular time, and to actually see how a mind, one person's mind, develops a theme and how it's similar throughout the person's life, and yet how it changes. So I would say that I'm probably dealing with similar issues throughout my life, but they've been manifested in different ways and they've changed. So I think that's extremely interesting to see something like that, to see how a person changes and how the art changes and how just what happens in that time.